problems for IT funding in higher ed, and I want to start with a quote from Wellman and Phipps in their article on funding infrastructure. And on that, they said, unfortunately, too many colleges and universities fail to fully realize technology's promise because too few campus officials know how to plan, pay for, and maintain the infrastructure that makes technology work. I really like this quote. It kind of is relevant to the fact that everybody wants technology, but they don't know how to pay for it and how to plan for it. As you can see in the slide, the demands on technology continue to grow as students come in increasingly in numbers each year. What they want to do, how they expect to do it, and what they're used to at home continues to force the campus to respond. There's a lot of new initiatives and demand for additional support and funding. Each year, the upgrades to Banner, the needs for student success, the new applications that are found out there that are a benefit or strategic initiative for the campus. All that is a growing demand on IT, and it requires financing and support. A lot of times the budget cuts lead to deferred upgrades and replacements. It's an easy thing to do as things get tight. We can replace 50 less computers each year and save, $50,000 to $60,000. But in doing that, we now end up, several years later, having $400,000 or $500,000 worth of computers to replace, which makes it, the students will look at that, see the computers are old, or the challenge in the classroom is old, and that becomes an issue for the longevity of the university at large. The demand for cutting-edge computers and facilities by the students, faculty, and staff, not only will they be bringing in their own technology, but they expect the university to have, new computers in the labs, new classroom support, good LMSs and learning management systems, good software applications that they can use, being able to access those software, anywhere at any time. We also have IT obsolescence to work on. As we replace or as we put in new equipment, it will age out. It may still be usable, but if the demands are overtaxing that particular device, it has to be replaced. One of the biggest growth has been in BYOD, to bring your own devices, where 10, 15 years ago, one person might have a wireless device, or 1 out of 5 people might have a wireless device. Nowadays, you'll have 2, 3, 4, 5 wireless devices per person, and that includes faculty, staff, and students. So the wireless network has to stay up and maintained, or it's going to degrade over time, and so that obsolescence has to be taken into account, and something has to be done about it long term. Operational expenditures, or OPEX, is basically that money that an IT department gets on a yearly basis. It's built into the budget. That is one thing that they actually do have somewhat right. It does provide that salaries, license renewals, and operating funds just for the organization in IT by itself. Then there's what they call CapEx, capital expenditures, and it's a little bit different from capital project funding. CapEx is usually that end-of-year funding that's out there, as they will sweep up money at the end of every year, either salary savings or projects that did not get completed or started, or budgets that did not get used for travel or whatever. They sweep all that money up, and then they'll have a list of different projects from IT, from the different colleges, whatever, and they will have prioritized them. And a lot of times IT will get, various amounts of money to pay for new labs, new computers, new technology in the classroom, or even support for infrastructure, new wireless, new servers, and possibly even positions. The only problem is usually that year-end money is one-time funding and not recurring, which has a problem on really trying to grow the positions that are out there. Capital project funding is usually that state funding that is tied to some type of capital improvement, whether it's a renovation or a new building. A lot of times if they go in, and especially if they do a new building, there is no technology that exists, so that all has to be purchased, just like the furniture and fixtures and the equipment, the desks and the chairs and that kind of stuff. So when they build out a new building, there will be set aside some amount of money to pay for the wireless infrastructure, the networking infrastructure, and any of the classrooms or labs or scientific equipment that might need to be in that building. However, that's, new buildings are out there. That happens. Just that's a little bit more rare. It's not something you can really count on, and it only affects that new building. It doesn't affect the rest of the campus in general. Student technology fees are a per credit fee that students pay each year when they go to classes. That's meant to build up a fund that can then be used to support technology that directly impacts students or their needs. Auxiliary services is that division of the campus that generates revenues through like the drink machines, through the food services, through some of the other ventures that they have out there. They have funds that can be used to support certain projects, but usually those projects are geared towards auxiliary services or something that they want to do. So it's a source of funding, but it's not a generalized source of funding. And it may be very particular to whatever they want to accomplish. Student housing, now this tends to fall under auxiliary services, just depends on how it's set up. However, a lot of times student housing will provide IT with a budget, a yearly budget, sometimes even will pay for personnel, like 1 or 2 support personnel, because the housing network can be as large, if not larger sometimes, than the campus network. And the number of users out there are constantly using it. They're customers of the housing, so they want to make sure that they're taken care of. So student housing can provide a budget. Again, this budget isn't necessarily meant for student housing, so you can't use it necessarily for just general purpose upgrades or for campus-wide initiatives. It's got to be used towards something that's housing related. Chargebacks are another way of funding IT. This is usually a very unpopular thing. Basically what it is that, if you have a computer, you get charged $100 a year or $50 a month or whatever for that computer, or your phone or the internet port, or whatever you use, you get charged for it. So if you have email, voicemail. The problem with that is it's usually very unpopular. It also, I think, creates a lot of animosity between the groups. And they also try to, I don't need this right now, so let me turn this off and then turn it back on when they do need it and so on. So I think it becomes more of a ping pong ball effect with people trying to reduce their costs but still trying to get what they need out of it. Another opportunity is grants. Grants are a source of income from funders where they have certain requirements, and if you can write a grant that gets funded, then you can use those funds to support whatever that grant was. You have to have support from your president, your provost, your executive council, your executive leadership to support IT and the idea of funding them in a way that makes more sense and provides them with a more cyclic version of funding and a more dependable version of funding rather than that kind of year-end funding or just the operational funding and then whenever there's projects. Strategic planning is another way to help show the leadership what's necessary. That's where IT needs to be aligning what they're going to be doing with what the university wants to accomplish. So with a strong vision and a strong strategic plan that is tightly coordinated and connected to the strategic plan for the campus, you can get leadership to buy into these things. You can also do some more long-range planning with that, and that you can say, okay, we know we want to work on student success, so here's things that we want to do in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years for student success to make that happen, and what we're going to need along the way. So I think that's one of the things that IT has not done well over the years was really doing strategic planning. A lot of times IT will plan for the 1 to 2 to 3 years. We need to really think beyond that into the 5 and 10 and 15 years. Even if it's just broad strokes, having ideas of where we want to go and what we want to do, it's going to be imperative to really align with what the university wants to do. Collaboration really deals with, getting the other departments on board, finding out what they need, finding out where their pain points are, and seeing what you can do to help with that. Collaboration will allow them to support your initiatives, and when you're looking for that money, for that budget, for that return, that constant amount of money to come in your budget each year, having the support of other units, other divisions, other groups is going to be imperative, and the leadership's going to see that all in the strategic planning, and it's going to make it much more easy for them to fund that and be more predictable in it. So innovation, it's hard thing to come up with something new, but having the opportunity to innovate, even sometimes looking at what people are doing, and it kind of goes along with collaboration, when you know what the business process is of an organization, of a unit, then you can go in there and help them innovate. You can sometimes just do some of the smallest things that make a big impact. A lot of times there are documents that need to be signed, and this could be done in what they call workflow, where somebody says, hey, you need to fill this document out, and they send it to whoever needs to get it. They can click on it in a PDF type format, and it can be sent to everybody who needs to either sign it or review it or look at it. And that type of thing is going to benefit that group, that unit, that department, and can also be then utilized throughout the entire campus for all the different departments and groups. And that becomes an innovative idea, a concept that can be made more efficient and save the campus money and time, and just it shows that IT is trying to be innovative. So coming up with ways of doing things better, being more efficient, being more proactive in how things are done, and saving other groups time and effort, makes a lot of sense and allows them to then support you in what you're trying to do with IT. So transformation and flexibility, being transformative, moving from this is how we used to do things to how we need to do things, and also being flexible is going to be very important as we move forward. We can't just sit where we were 20 years ago. So the conclusion slide. So everything I've read kind of points out that there really aren't any models that meet the needs of IT in the institution that they serve. There's a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts out there, which I think are all really good and will make an impact. A strong IT vision aligned with the goals of the institution makes it easier for the upper management support funding. That seems to be a very common theme that I read throughout almost all the different authors and all the documents that they produce. Long-range planning is necessary to predict funding needs and enable management of the technologies. So, you've got to know, you can't, like I said earlier, you can't just look out 1 or 2 years. You've got to look out 5 years, 10 years, and you need to be able to look at what you have out there, what needs to be replaced, when it needs to be replaced, and the more you can do that, the more you can make that level set, the more you'll be able to sell that to upper management, and so that they'll be able to see what you're trying to do and why it makes sense. These last two are more from my CIO and things that he's told me, but I've also kind of gleaned this out of some of the documents I've read and as well as talking to other people. One of the things is tell a good story. And, that's that collaboration with other groups. If you can go out there and make an impact with a unit or a group or a division or whatever it is, and you can then come back and say, this is what we did, this is how we did this, then it allows you to build up a certain level of esteem that will allow other people to say, oh yeah, I'd like to work with you guys, and that you guys can help me too. And that kind of goes along with the build relationships of trust. It's all about the relationships you build and those individuals trusting you. If they trust you, then you're going to be able to do things for them that you wouldn't do otherwise. And all of these things kind of play into the idea that if you can bring about a change, a top-down level view of looking at things where they see IT not just as a utility, but as a strategic partner, then they're going to see the value in providing money in a more stable and consistent time frame rather than just that year-end stuff that we do now. So there is really no good solid model yet, but I think there's a lot of good opportunities out there that we can capitalize